gotta be honest, when I first saw this news, my immediate reaction was that this could end up being a much bigger deal than a lot of people realize. On the surface, it looks like one team just made a huge move. But when you really start thinking about what it means for the division, the matchups, and the future, there's a lot more to unpack here. And as a fan, I think there are reasons to be concerned, but also plenty of reasons not to overreact. This is one of those situations where the headlines tell one story, but the full picture might tell a very different one. Before we get into everything, make sure to hit that like button if you're riding with Seattle no matter what, and drop a comment below with "Go Hawks." I want to see how many real Seahawks fans are watching today. The news that many Seattle Seahawks fans were hoping would never become reality has now become official. Myles Garrett has been traded by the Cleveland Browns to the Los Angeles Rams, and that instantly changes the conversation around the NFC West. For Seattle, this is not just another move around the league. This is a major division development that will directly impact the Seahawks for the foreseeable future. According to the information discussed in the source material, the Rams had reportedly been working aggressively on making this move happen since around the NFL draft, pursuing Garrett for months before finally getting the deal completed. What makes this story especially interesting is that there had already been growing discussion about Garrett potentially becoming available as time passed due to the structure of his contract and the Browns' previous financial decisions. Once the timing aligned, the Rams moved quickly and secured one of the most dominant defensive players in football. The immediate reaction from a Seahawks perspective is obvious. The Rams got better. There is no realistic way to deny that. As talented as Jared Verse has been, the argument presented in the source is straightforward. Myles Garrett is an upgrade. His production in sacks and tackles for loss creates a different level of disruption, and that is exactly why this trade is receiving so much attention. The Rams already had a competitive roster, and now they have added a player viewed as one of the most impactful defensive forces in the league. However, the story does not end with simply saying that the Rams improved. The more important discussion is what this move reveals about Los Angeles and how Seattle should view the situation moving forward. The Rams are clearly operating with an aggressive win-now mentality. Everything about this trade points toward maximizing a narrow championship window. The source repeatedly emphasizes that the Rams are pushing all their chips toward the center of the table. They are attempting to capitalize on the current state of their roster and chase a championship while they believe the opportunity still exists. That approach comes with rewards, but it also comes with risks. One of the biggest points raised is that Los Angeles is becoming increasingly dependent on a smaller group of high-impact players. The trade improves their roster today, but it also increases the pressure to succeed immediately. Expectations are no longer simply about competing. Expectations become about winning at the highest level. Once a franchise makes a move of this magnitude, anything short of a championship begins to feel disappointing. That is the reality the Rams are now facing. Meanwhile, the Seahawks find themselves in a very different position. Instead of pushing every resource toward one superstar acquisition, Seattle maintains roster depth and flexibility. The source strongly argues that depth remains one of Seattle's biggest strengths. While the Rams have concentrated resources into elite talent, the Seahawks have multiple players capable of stepping into larger roles when needed. That difference could become extremely important over the course of a long season. Another fascinating element of this story involves the trade cost itself. There was an expectation that acquiring a player of Garrett's caliber would require an enormous package. The discussion suggests that many believed a team would potentially need multiple first-round selections to even begin the conversation. Instead, the final outcome looked different than some anticipated. That naturally creates debate among fans about whether Seattle should have pursued a similar opportunity or whether avoiding such a massive commitment was ultimately the smarter decision. From the Seahawks' perspective, there is another layer that cannot be ignored. Seattle now has to face Myles Garrett inside the division. That changes game planning immediately. The source points out that Garrett has already had success against Seattle in previous meetings. In 2 career games against the Seahawks, he recorded 3 sacks and forced a fumble while consistently creating problems for opposing offenses. Those numbers are enough to demand attention from any coaching staff preparing for him. At the same time, there is also optimism regarding how Seattle matches up against him. Charles Cross becomes one of the most important names in this entire discussion. The source highlights that one of Garrett's previous meetings with Seattle came against Cross, and while Garrett recorded a sack, there is a belief that Cross showed enough to suggest he can compete against elite pass rushers. Nobody is claiming that Garrett can simply be shut down. That would be unrealistic. But there is confidence that Seattle possesses a legitimate answer at left tackle rather than entering those matchups without options. Even so, the Seahawks will almost certainly need adjustments when facing the Rams. The discussion focuses heavily on offensive strategy. Staying ahead of the chains, running the football effectively, utilizing play-action concepts, and providing additional support through tight ends and running backs are all presented as important ways to prevent Garrett from completely taking over a game. The idea is not to isolate offensive linemen against him repeatedly and hope for the best. The goal is to make him think, slow down his pass rush opportunities, and force him to respect both the run and the pass. Perhaps the most important takeaway for Seahawks fans is psychological rather than tactical. The Rams may now receive much of the national attention. There will be analysts who look at their roster and immediately elevate them into championship conversations. There will be predictions, rankings, and expectations that place Los Angeles near the top of the league. But according to the source, that creates an opportunity for Seattle. The Seahawks can embrace the role of the hunter rather than the hunted. They can use the external expectations surrounding the Rams as motivation throughout the offseason and into the regular season. The challenge is now clearly defined. Seattle knows exactly who stands in front of them. They know the Rams have improved. They know the road through the division may have become more difficult. But they also know that depth, preparation, and long-term roster construction can still be powerful advantages when competing against a team that has fully committed itself to the present. And that is what makes this story so compelling. The Rams made a move designed to win right now. The Seahawks now have to prove that their approach can withstand that pressure and eventually come out on top. The next chapter of this rivalry may be shaped by one blockbuster trade, but the real answer will be decided on the field when these teams finally meet. What do you think about the Rams trading for Myles Garrett, and how much do you believe this move changes Seattle's chances inside the NFC West? If you enjoyed this update and want to stay ahead of every major Seahawks story, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, turn on notifications, and leave a like on the video. We cover every important move, every rumor, every breaking development, and everything that impacts the Seattle Seahawks throughout the season. And don't leave yet. Click the video that's on your screen right now, because that's where you'll find the next big Seahawks update. The latest Seahawks news always arrives here first. See you in the next one.